That's right, I like musicals. I think they're pretty epic. Speaking of which, Epic the Musical, written by one Jorge Rivera Herons, is an adaptation of the Greek epic The Odyssey. Originating in 2019, the project started out as Jorge's senior thesis for college, where he was tasked with writing a musical. This wouldn't be his first, a past project of his being a musical called My Heart Says Go, in which a med school student decides to be a musical theater major instead, inspired by his own life story. While being a private endeavor for some time, Epic would take a turn for the better after Jorge started sharing his work on his TikTok page, allowing people to see the musical develop. As he continued working on it, he slowly revealed more and more parts of the final product, such as the fact that it would be a 40-song musical separated into 2 acts. And another unique aspect to the musical is that the acts themselves would be separated into concept albums, or technically EPs, dubbed sagas. These would each drop as the finalized version of the musical started to come together and allowed for hype to build between releases. On top of allowing Jorge more time to develop the musical, it worked perfectly to build an audience anticipating each saga's release. Speaking of, this was no longer a solo project, as Jorge needed more people to voice the many characters. While in true Lin-Manuel Miranda style, he voiced the main character Odysseus, he couldn't voice everyone. He ended up casting over 20 different people via TikTok auditions, which made a lot of talented people have a shot of being in the project. Between December of 2022 and December of 2024, he released the 9 sagas containing 3 to 5 songs each, which ultimately added up to the original track count of 40 songs. It was critically acclaimed, every saga release being the #1 soundtrack on the Billboard Cast Album chart. However, some people are critical about the musical, both in how it sounds musically and how it adapts its source material. So today, I've decided to rank every song from the musical worst to best based on 4 bits of criteria. First off, there's a 1 to 10 scale for how I feel about the lyrics, both in how they sound and how well they fit with the song. Next up is how good it sounds performance-wise and instrumentally. This will be a 1 to 10 scale as well. The last 2 are story and quality, based on how well it explains the story for a casual listener and how well it's produced, respectively. These will both be scaled from 1 to 5, making for a total maximum of 30 points for any given song. I put all 40 songs from the musical through this rating and have made a list of them from worst to best, in my opinion. So, let's get started. Unlike my typical ranking videos, this is point-based, so there's not exactly tiers. So let's just get started with the 40th spot. And just looking at this list, I can tell there's going to be some controversial opinions, but please let me know your thoughts in the comments.
I'm the alpha, I'm the leader, I'm the one to trust.
Don't you just love how the Wisdom Saga completely takes you out of Odysseus' story just to talk about Telemachus, who ends up really doing nothing in the finale? For 3 whole songs? I wouldn't mind this. Actually, I'd love to get more Telemachus development if it weren't for the songs he sings being really bad. The worst infringement on this, in my opinion, is Little Wolf. The suitors are ganging up on Telemachus, who pitifully tries to fight back against them. I have 2 big issues with this song, but the biggest one is the chorus. I just can't stand the Little Wolf being repeated over and over again. It's not musically complex, and it just sounds cheap and very first drafty. It's such a shame too, because we come to this song from the ending of Legendary with an epic one-liner from Antinous, calling his mother a tramp and encouraging him to fight back, and what we're given is boring and underwhelming. A good chunk of the song is just Antinous nagging Telemachus to fight while the suitors chant Little Wolf over and over again. And once we think we're about to get a fight, we get Athena. I'm going to talk about my issues with Athena now because she has a lot more narratively important songs in the future. I really dislike Athena's motif. To keep it simple, a motif is basically a musical fingerprint which reappears throughout a musical work, and each character in Epic has one, which also corresponds with a musical instrument. Athena's theme is a synthy piano, which has a very interesting effect where it cuts in and out. There's plenty of different instruments in Epic, but this one just feels out of place, and I just don't care for it. Athena monologues a bit and teaches Telemachus how to quote-unquote fight, and after even more repetitions of the chorus, we listen as the son of the king gets his ass handed to him. And then we get this line from Athena.
Oh, maybe I pushed you a bit too hard.
Jorge loves having a little bit of comedy in Epic, but damn, this doesn't work at all. The suitors taunt Telemachus a bit, and he asks why Athena helped him, and then the song ends, leaving you with a bad taste in your mouth. It's just extremely repetitive and underwhelming for the massive setup in the prior song. It's not the worst thing, it's just that one song every musical has that people don't like. Or I might be crazy and it's actually amazing and I'm missing something, who knows. But either way, let's get out of this one before I hear the chorus for a 6th time. Ugh.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own?
Going from ruthlessness to this is, something for sure. You'd think Odysseus and the crew would take a second to think about how they've just lost 550 of their men, but no, instead we get Eurylochus rapping.
Since we left home, we faced a variety of foes from a wide range of places. Gods, monsters, you know the roster.
Oh, Eurylochus, my sweet summer child, please stop rapping, I beg of you. Anyway, they land on the island of the witch Circe, and all the remaining men are more horny than they are scared for their life because of what literally just happened with Poseidon. So she captures them, only Eurylochus and Odysseus escaping. He explains, through rap, how the most dangerous thing 42 men who haven't seen their wives in 10 years could possibly encounter was a woman, and how she turned them all into pigs. In this explanation, we get our first iconic Jorge "what" in this list.
What?
There's a lot of these in the musical, and it comes off like a cartoon character saying, "It's right behind me, isn't it?" After this, we get to my major gripe with the song, and that's once again the chorus. The main line, which states the title of the song, simply sounds like a mouthful, and it doesn't sound natural whatsoever.
No, I'm not a player, I'm a puppeteer. No, I don't play, I puppeteer, yeah.
Like, what's going on with the syllables there? Of course, the lyrics aren't the only issue here, as it sounds pretty bland musically. The only interesting part being the back and forth between Eurylochus' explanation of events and Circe's threats. The one redeeming part in all this would be Odysseus' lament about how he's lost so many men that he couldn't not risk his life to save the ones left. It's our last bit of mercy and kindness we'll see from him, and it's a nice change to see how much he cares about his men right now. Because boy, that's gonna change soon! As a whole, Troy is an extremely solid saga, however, this song throws everything upside down. The introduction of Athena was going to be difficult to place regardless, as it's going to be out of place no matter where it was slotted in. Requiring both a pause in the action and a flashback, there's nowhere in the musical where it would have worked, aside from possibly Wisdom as she introduces herself to Telemachus, but by then it would be far too late. So Jorge put it here, right at the end of Troy, and it really hurts the listening experience. Athena comes to Odysseus to attack him for following Polites' advice of having open arms, calling back on his initial meeting with her when he killed a magic boar without hesitation. Believe it or not, I don't actually have any major gripes with the chorus of this song. I'd actually go as far as to say that it's the only good part of the song. The harmonies between Athena and Odysseus are really well done and it's fun to listen to. The big issues arise when we flash back to when the first two meet. Odie fools Athena into revealing herself and we get this little thing.
I was lying and you fell for my bluff! Aha!
Oh, it's just extremely cringeworthy and I do not like it, and we'll see more of these laughs in the future. It is just so wildly different in tone to the rest of the saga when Odysseus explains how cool Athena is.
Be honest, you are Athena. Badass in the arena.
Athena's synthy sounds go along with the speedy piano and it just feels really out of place anywhere in the musical, and especially here in Troy. The saga is serious and sets up our characters masterfully with beautiful orchestrations, and then there's just this at the end. It's filled with jokes and bits on top of the instrumental like this bit here.
Man, best is a friend.
He'll see where it ends.
Okay.
Like, I get that it's the start of the musical and it's a younger Odysseus, but that just doesn't work for me. It interrupts the story and leaves you with a pretty bad song to end off Troy.
You're done. You're done.
Crazy idea, but I don't think the Circe saga is very good. In this song, Odysseus and Circe have a Pokemon battle, and the entire song is just the build-up and aftermath to that. Circe talks about turning his men into their true forms, pigs, and then sings my second least favorite chorus in the musical.
If you make one wrong move, then you're done for. Anything I don't approve, then you're done for.
It's repetitive, and there's nothing behind any of Circe's claims since she never does anything to harm Odysseus. He's eaten holy moly, so he can't be hurt by Circe's powers, so they send out creatures to fight each other. Only issue with this, they never mention that this happens in the song. The only way that you could know this is happening is from a one-off line Hermes says in the song prior about summoning a creation of your choice, but there are zero lyrical or audio cues to suggest this happens in the song. Of course, this is a concept album, so if it were to get a stage adaptation, it would be far clearer that this happens, but with the lack of visuals, you really wouldn't be able to tell. A lot of the Epic fanbase relies on animatics and animations to visually represent the songs, many of which I've been showing on screen, and as great as they are, we aren't talking about those. Songs like Survive from the Cyclops saga do a phenomenal job with its audio design, allowing for easier mental ideas of what's happening. But here, aside from two distant roars, they're just singing while all of this is supposedly happening. Jorge was greatly inspired by video games during the creation of Epic, so this is supposed to be, I guess, a boss battle of sorts, but it just lacks any sense of urgency and seems kinda bland. Like I said earlier, there's nothing behind Circe's threats. By the end of it, Odysseus has won the battle, and then Circe just begins to tempt him, and it's fine. It's just not an amazing song story-wise, and while it sounds pretty good instrumentally, the lyrics aren't anything to write home about. This may seem like a low placement, but keep in mind the points as well. 19 out of 30 isn't bad at all, but I still have a few issues with this song. Opening up the Wisdom Saga coming right from Thunderbringer is a wild tonal shift, but we're introduced to Odysseus' son, Telemachus. He's been told all these amazing stories about his father, but hasn't had the opportunity to truly meet him, as he left for war when he was an infant. He wants to be famous like him, not only to have the glory of defeating monsters and myths, but to have the strength to stand up for his mother. It's revealed that there are suitors all over their castle begging for Penelope's hand so that they can become the king, and they aren't the nicest people in the world. Telemachus wishes that he could be like his father so that when they try to steal the throne, he can stop them, and the chorus in which it communicates this is actually really good. As confusing as it is changing perspectives like this since we followed Odysseus the whole time, the childish nature of Telemachus' dreams work well into showing us what the Wisdom Saga is going to be like. This doesn't last long though, as he runs into one of the suitors, Antinous, who delivers this dastardly line.
I just did. What you gonna do about it, champ?
Ooh, that just drips with malice, and I love it so much. Aside from this, I still think it's pretty simple lyrically outside of the choruses, and I don't care for the twangy piano that acts as Telemachus' motif, but still makes for a great opener, which has the great misfortune of leading into Little Wolf. Unlike a lot of the songs prior, I can confidently say that if I asked people what their favorite song from the musical was, no one would say Different Beast. Out of every song, aside from perhaps the opener, this feels like exposition, and nothing else aside from one major plot point. We see a different side of Odysseus now that he's decided to become the monster rar rar rar, and it's quite frightening. The sirens which tried to capture him are killed after some monologuing from Odysseus about how he managed to escape their trance. Then the crew talks about how different he is since his visit to the underworld and how he's a different beast, thus the title. It's an intense song which does well to show Odysseus' development in the second act, but it doesn't do much else for the story. Speaking of the story, the song doesn't progress it in any meaningful way. He just talks about how he knows the way home now in a pretty blunt line. It sounds pretty good, but it suffers from Epic's MIDI instrumentals, which do work for most of the time, but occasionally makes the orchestration sound a little fake. Overall, it's not terrible, but also not anything remotely special.
Strike! You're out!
Vengeance is an interesting saga which polarizes a lot of people in the fandom. Being the second to last saga, people had high expectations going in, and some people left feeling a little cheated after the release. Their main issue being with this song. It's interesting. It acts as the triumphant final duel between Odysseus and Poseidon, but an awful lot of it is instrumental. First off, the little motif at the start sounds super out of place with the use of synthy piano, and I don't like it at all. Then Odysseus monologues about how he needs to get home, and this is followed by, guess what, even more instrumental. The reasoning behind this is because it's a concept album for a proper stage adaptation, so I'm sure there's space for actual fight choreography. However, in this audio-only version, it's a real hindrance to the experience, especially with the triumphant horns clearly being MIDI. The better part of the song comes from when Odysseus finally bests Poseidon, and the god claims that he can't die, so victory is impossible. However, Odysseus takes his mantra of ruthlessness to heart and repeatedly stabs Poseidon with his own trident until he begs for mercy. Throughout this, Poseidon screams in a weird way, and that's because it's mirroring the little synthy riff at the start of the song. That's fine, I guess. Nifty gimmick. The whole song just feels really anticlimactic and kinda anime-like when Odysseus shouts, 600 strike! The kicker here is at the very end with these epic line deliveries.
How will you sleep at night?
Next to my wife.
Ooh, that's cold. Very well done, Odysseus.
Something's alive in the ocean.
This is definitely another song which suffers from the nature of it stemming from a concept album, and this is definitely made to be performed. It's a shorter song which, similarly to 600 Strike, relies a lot on instrumentals, and it talks about Odysseus' encounter with the sea monster Charybdis. His confidence is unmatched, especially after Hermes' encouragement, so he heads straight for the beast with plans to kill it. Jorge's vocals here are actually fantastic, especially in the chorus where he shouts for the monster to bring it on. Once the beast swallows and subsequently vomits his raft, he manages to escape and finally sees the island of Ithaca over the horizon. He takes a moment to breathe as he approaches his homeland and realizes that he'll be seeing Penelope in a matter of hours. But all of his hopes are vanquished as the water rises to reveal Poseidon, but we'll find out how that goes on later. It's not much of a song, the ending being the only heavy hitter, but I do like the vocals in the chorus a lot, as mentioned. Sandwiched between the other big songs from Vengeance though, it's easy to overlook this one, but I think it's pretty darn alright.
Friendship, friendship, just the perfect friendship.
This is a pretty whimsical song for the first half, where we see Odysseus ask the wind god Aeolus for assistance. The lyrics here are mostly fine, but I really don't love Aeolus' voice, especially the little laugh she does throughout. Aside from that though, I don't have a whole lot of grievances with the song. The wind minions, voices are a fun addition and aren't annoying as they were in Open Arms, and the way the story progresses is really nifty. Aeolus traps the storm they'd been stuck in into a bag and tells Odysseus not to let anyone open said bag. He thinks it will be a breeze. But Aeolus' minions tell the crew that treasure is inside, thus the name of the song. Aeolus warns Odysseus to keep his friends close and his enemies closer, since this bag could cause some of his crew to turn on him. 9 days later, he's still going strong until a mysterious member of the crew opens the wind bag and returns the storm to the sky, sending Odysseus and his crew flying towards the territory of Poseidon. A lot happens in this song, but it doesn't feel rushed or, on the other hand, too long. It's pretty simple lyrically, but still manages to deliver the story well, even though it covers a decent amount of Odysseus' journey. While it is my least favorite from the Ocean Saga, it's still pretty good.
Kids with. Oh, he's drowning.
What a wild song to follow, Monster. We open up sometime after Act 1 where we see Odysseus and his crew traveling along the sea, until they seemingly run into Penelope? She's just randomly going for a swim, I suppose, but it's pretty obvious that not all is as it seems. As she calls for Odysseus, she continuously tells him to jump in the water to be with her, and he realizes something isn't right. He plays with the imposter, telling her how frightful he is about going into the water, and the creature responds saying that she'll take the suffering away from him. While pretending to believe her, Odysseus asks what the best route back to Ithaca is, and boy, I don't care for the vocals here, he just talks kind of weird.
Let's say I was on the run, or hiding, from, I don't know, Poseidon.
The fake Penelope reveals that he'll have to go through the lair of Scylla, a vicious ocean monster. After this, Odysseus continues to play the Sirens games for a few moments more until we transition into different beasts to show the ruthlessness that we'll come to expect from this act. It's a pretty alright song in general, and I especially appreciate how it gives us one last look at the Odysseus who took Polites' advice before we see the monster he's become. Fun intro into Act 2, but I'm not sure why Jorge thought this song was a big spoiler, seeing as we know what happens in the Odyssey.
You know me as the Rizzler, I'm the Panther dressed in black.
Yes, that one song where Circe gets really freaky with Odysseus. After losing the Pokemon battle, Circe decides that the only way she can defeat Odysseus is, as the kids say, rizzing him up. She continuously hits on Odysseus to convince him to let her win this duel, but Odie has one advantage. He really, really loves his wife. He just thinks about Penelope to get through Circe's attempts, and it works. This is also the point in the musical where Jorge made a bit of a miscalculation. Odysseus says that he's been away for 12 years, when in actuality he's only been away from Ithaca for about 10. Jorge ended up sticking with this error and changed some lyrics in future songs which continue to claim this is the right amount of time, giving Epic a different storyline to the original Odyssey. Although this is just one of many differences from Homer's writing. Regardless, Circe gives up because apparently she's never met a man who didn't want her before, and tells Odysseus that she'll help him. She'll send him and his crew to the underworld to meet a prophet who will tell them their future, and Odysseus accepts this offer. It's not an awful song, all of Odysseus' parts are fantastic, it's just Circe who I don't care for. Also, it's a little boring lyrically, especially the last two lines.
Day the world will need a puppeteer no more. Or maybe one day the world will need a puppeteer.
Like, what does that mean? I like how it sounds a lot more than the other Circe songs, and most of the back half is really solid. It's just the seduction part I don't care for.
Have fun storming the castle.
I love songs in 5-4! Storm sees Odysseus and his crew braving the seas after their run-in with Polyphemus, and things aren't going too well. We'll learn soon that the storm comes from Poseidon's wrath, but for now, they're just trying to survive. They try to steer clear of the big waves, but the choppy waters make difficult sailing. It may seem hopeless until they find a mysterious island hovering in the sky. Jorge said that he interpreted the island floating, literally, while in the original Odyssey it was just very tall, but hey, whatever works. They shoot harpoons up so that Odysseus can get to the top and hopefully speak to the wind god, and then the song transitions into Luck Runs Out. It's a pretty fun song, and the crew vocals in the chorus sound wonderful. The issue I have is that it's struck with another case of the terribly obvious MIDI instrumentals. The horns just do not sound real whatsoever, and yes, I know it's a concept album and that the actual musical will sound better with a band, but still, I just do not care for how it sounds. Other than that though, it's a really solid song. Not too much to say about it though.
Goodbye.
Athena yells at Odysseus for being a softie and then breaks up with him. Okay, but actually, My Goodbye is a pretty solid song, especially when it comes to Athena. Where most of her songs are pretty mid lyrically, I actually think this one is pretty well written. After spending years teaching Odysseus to be a warrior of the mind, she's upset that he gave the Cyclops mercy and then bragged about his victory to him afterwards, and rightfully so. He broke nearly every rule she gave him, so she decides that he may not be the protege that she expected, and leaves. She bids him farewell and explains that by leaving, he won't be able to disappoint her any longer. But Odysseus isn't having it. He hasn't gotten to the point of his journey where sacrifice and murder become natural to him, so he still has morals. He explains to Athena that what she asks from him is far too much, and that he couldn't live with himself if he was truly a warrior of the mind. He criticizes her for being selfish, only thinking of herself and extending her strategies of war into the world of man. At the moment, he's happy that he'll be rid of her, and also bids her goodbye. It's really interesting seeing two people who've seen and participated in war with wildly different views on it go face to face, and it'll be all the more rewarding once we see them reunite in the Ithaca saga. So yeah, here I don't hate every Athena song. Woohoo!
Sorry about what I said.
Opinions are really divided on this song, but I don't think it's all that bad. After Love in Paradise, we may view Calypso as a heartless god who only wishes for someone to take as her own, but we learn her true motives here. Over a century ago, she was sent away to her island, and she didn't have anyone to talk to for that entire time. Imagine not being able to have any person-to-person connections or interactions for a century. That would drive the typical person mad. So when Odysseus washed up on her shore, she did everything she could to make sure that he wouldn't leave. But she had no preconceptions for what human interaction is like. She hasn't even been able to practice for over a century, so of course she may have seemed overbearing and a little crazy. So when she was informed that he'd be set free by the other gods, she was heartbroken. She explains all of this to Odysseus and openly states that she's mad. She doesn't want to lose the one person she's been able to share her life with. She's unabashedly loved him and understands why he wouldn't reciprocate, but still wishes that she wasn't alone. But then, either in earnest or simply to lift her spirits, we hear Odysseus say 3 words we'll only hear him say once more in the musical.
I love you,
You do?
but not in the way that you want me to.
After 8 years together, Odysseus obviously made something of a connection to her, but he could never love someone as much as he does Penelope. It's a really interesting moment for Odysseus' character, which shows that he's not just the monster he's claimed to become since the end of Act 1, and that he's still capable of love. We'll see him revisit this at the end of the musical, but I think it's done wonderfully here. It's down this low because the lyrics are a little on the nose at times, and I don't think it fits in too well with the rest of the Vengeance Saga. I think it would have been better if it were placed at the end of Wisdom, but it would break the saga's themes of not being from Odysseus' POV.
There is only one thing worse than a horse. Boom. A child.
The opening song to Epic. We see Odysseus in media res, with him and his 600 men in the battlefield of Troy. He waits inside the famous Trojan horse to attack, and he commands his men to go forth with the memories of their loved ones leading them forward. Before he charges into the battle, Odysseus takes a moment to think about Penelope and Telemachus, and we hear the signature motif for the first time.
Penelope.
The way that this song sets up everything is actually amazing. Like that motif, the names of his crewmates, and also Odysseus' personal battle against his morals. Speaking of the latter, Odysseus is faced with his first major decision in the musical once he infiltrates the Trojans' castle. He's given a vision from the gods showing a person defeating him in battle, and it is revealed to be something from the future that he has the opportunity to stop. He goes to see who his foe is, only to be met by a baby in a cradle. The gods keep telling him that no matter what he does, raise a child as his own, send him far away, and etc., it will always result in his downfall. He begs the gods not to make him do this terrible deed, but the gods reinforce that it's either him or this child, and that there won't be another chance. It's a fantastic opener, which sets up a lot of the different musical motifs as well as the major themes of the musical, and it's also a banger. It's this low because lyrically it's still pretty simple, and while it gets its points across, it still feels like a lot of setup. To be frank, this song is high because of Telemachus' falsetto notes, but I suppose there's more to it than that, so I'll keep going. Unlike the rest of the Athena and Telemachus songs, I actually like this one because it develops both of their characters while also being good musically. Who'da thunk? After Telemachus gets his ass handed to him by Antinous, Athena tries to calm him down by insisting things will be okay. She confides in him that she once had a friend. That's right, she admitted that Odysseus was her friend after all, and that Telemachus reminded her of him. She understands now that he was struggling with the constant violence, so she wants to right that wrong with Telemachus. He tells her how much he appreciates her help, and that she shouldn't feel so bad that she let her friend down. The two bounce off each other really well, and part of me wishes that we had more songs of the two of them. But with their track record, I can't say that with any real confidence. The only bit lyrically that really irks me is at the end.
You're a good kid.
Thanks.
But that's not that bad. We're getting to the songs which I have very little issues with, so I'll start talking more about the positives from here on out. And this is a pretty good start.
2 shots of vodka.
Apparently some people don't like this song, and I can somewhat understand why. This song follows the crew as they arrive at the cave the Lotus Eaters send them to, and inside are a bunch of sheep ripe for the slaughter. Eurylochus and Odysseus celebrate, but they think for a moment that it's too good to be true. This hunch is proved to be correct, as they're faced with the Cyclops, Polyphemus, who is upset that his favorite sheep have been killed. As he approaches the crew, he prepares to kill them in retaliation, but Odysseus steps up and tries to show open arms like Polites suggested. He offers the Cyclops a cask of fine wine in exchange for them leaving unharmed, and the beast accepts, requesting to know Odysseus' name. Being a warrior of the mind, he's smarter than that, so when he introduces himself, he gives himself a different name.
My name is Nobody.
The Cyclops accepts, but says his kindness will only spare him minutes of his life, as he'll be the last member of the crew to die. Funny enough, he just predicted how the story ends. This transitions seamlessly into the next song, leaving this number as more of an introduction to the saga. Some find it weak in comparison to the other songs, but I quite like it. The sound design is some of Jorge's finest work, with the cave reverberating the sounds of the sheep being killed, as well as Polyphemus' footsteps in deep voice. It's really nifty, and I think it's quite underrated in the musical.
Let's play a game.
Okay, give me a second, I can explain. This song sees Athena asking her father Zeus to free Odysseus from Calypso's island, and he asks her to convince 5 different gods to let him go. Every character in Epic has their own musical motif, so each part of the song is a different sound. Apollo comes first with a sound similar to that of Hermes, and this is quite possibly the least problematic one. This is followed by Hephaestus, whose theme sounds quite dwarven. His voice is okay, but nothing amazing, same with Aphrodite. But the big issue with this song is Ares. The song has a lot of guest singers since they're a small part, but wow, Ares' voice is just not good.
Kind of sick, coward, holds back his power while his friends get devoured.
I don't care for his voice at all, and Hera's voice is pretty good in comparison. Ultimately, Athena convinces the 5 gods, but apparently this still isn't good enough for Zeus, who decides to strike her down anyway for defying him, even though she literally did exactly what he asked her to do. She's greatly wounded and some of the gods believe her to be dead, but she insists that Odysseus is freed in her final moments of consciousness. We won't know if she survives after this until the end of the musical, and this moment is done really well. But overall, it's still a really mixed bag of a song to me with the different little bits with the different gods, but overall it's pretty alright. Not quite the highlight of the Wisdom Saga, but definitely up there.
I'm still standing better than I ever did.
This is a super action-packed song showing Odysseus' duel with the Cyclops, and the sound design makes it even better. It sounds fantastic musically, with Jorge's high notes and the intense music throughout. We see for the first time how far he's willing to go for survival, and we see his strategic mind to play it well. He thinks fast and surrounds the Cyclops in order to escape the view of his single eye, and his men attack. He worries for the lives of his men, who he's led through 10 years of war without a single casualty. Possibly losing their lives so close to the end of their journey would be heartbreaking. The chorus here is absolutely brilliant, and one of my favorite in the musical.
600 lives at stake. It's just one life to take. And when we kill him, then our journey's over.
The sound effects lose a bit of quality. Okay, I'm lying. The Cyclops' roar sounds like a crusty iPod Nano playing an MP3. This really lessens the impact of the intense moments, but when the Cyclops brings out a club and kills some of Odysseus' men, including poor Polites, it really hits hard. Emotionally, and physically, I guess. Then we get a reprise of the chorus from the perspective of Polyphemus, which ends the song on an extremely bleak note. The entire Cyclops saga is super underrated in my opinion.
May Zeus himself strike me down if I'm lying.
Right after the mutiny, as if things couldn't get any worse for Odysseus, Zeus himself comes down to flipping the bird. He comes to claim some lives after the crew kills his animals, and wow, that's a pretty bad track record. If I had a nickel for every time Odysseus got members of his crew killed because they killed animals that belonged to someone related to a god or is a god, I'd have 2 nickels, which is about 1 more than I should have. He criticizes Odysseus for being prideful and then powerfully states who he is and what he can do. The bass notes are wonderful and are a huge breath of fresh air from all the tenors in the musical. Odysseus is then faced with a choice from the god which will determine who gets a return to Ithaca. Odysseus can sacrifice his own life to save his crew, or kill all his remaining crewmates, making himself the only one of the 600 men to have a chance at seeing Ithaca again. Then something very interesting happens. Odysseus shouts this. When was the last time we heard him say this? The very start of the musical, when he was tasked with killing the infant son of Prince Hector. At this point, he knows that there's not a choice. He's lost too much and has come too far not to return to Ithaca and see Penelope, so he's begging to Zeus. Not because he doesn't want to choose, but because he doesn't want to be responsible. Without a choice, Eurylochus faces Odysseus one last time, knowing deep down what his captain is going to do. As Zeus repeats the chorus one last time, Odysseus can only watch as his remaining men are smited down by the god. Thunder probably has the most polarizing arc from start to finish. I mean, it's hard to believe that 4 songs ago, Odysseus was singing about how shy he is, and now all of his men are dead. This makes for a shaky transition into the Wisdom Saga, but still works well on its own. Really powerful song which shows how mighty the gods truly are, and how much of a monster Odysseus has really become. Athena decides to use her powers to see where Odysseus has been since she left him. We discovered that he's washed up on the island of the goddess Calypso after Zeus killed his crew, and that she's been holding him captive for 8 years. There's a spell on the island which makes it so no one can willingly go to or leave it, so he's basically trapped there indefinitely. Calypso is so happy to finally have someone with her that she expects him to fall in love with her immediately. However, Odysseus still longs to return to Penelope, especially after the massive sacrifice he's just made. We find out he's been on their island for 8 whole years, a slightly different number than the original Odyssey to compensate for the mistake in the Circe saga, but still a long time. Then we get to one of the most emotional scenes in all of the musical. Calypso finds Odysseus on the edge of a cliff, remembering all the terrors he's seen throughout his journey. All he can remember at the moment are the screams of his crew dying one by one, all because of the choices he's made. He knows he may never see Penelope again, and is willing to end his suffering because of it. But Calypso talks him out of it. She truly cares about him, and though he may be a broken man after everything he's gone through, she still sees something in him. He won't ever leave her, but she's good company to have. After seeing all this, Athena decides that the gods must help him escape, and we're led into God Games. It's a really nifty song and the highlight of the Wisdom Saga in my opinion. I'll talk about my thoughts on each saga in the end, but it's definitely not my favorite. This song makes up for the bad ones though. This song is a lot of things, but in simple terms, Eurylochus is done with Odysseus' bullshit. The captain was told that he'd have to travel through Scylla later, but didn't inform the rest of his crew this. Once the sirens told him, and the rest of the crew had beeswax in their ears, he was the only one who knew the dangers of their route. Once this is discovered, Eurylochus rallies up the rest of the crew to take a stand against Odysseus, the captain who's led them astray for years. The two friends, once close enough to be brothers, begin to duel, and Odysseus seems outnumbered until the ship hits an island. They begrudgingly get off the ship to be met with cows all over the island, ripe for the slaughter. Sound familiar, right? Odysseus begs Eurylochus not to doom them, as these cows are friends of the sun god, but he looks at his tired and hungry crew and disagrees. They slaughter the cows, and the storm above them begins to grow, and all the men race back to the sea. It's a really interesting number which shows how Odysseus' journey has been taxing on everyone, not just him, and how him becoming the monster affects his friends. It leads perfectly into Thunderbringer and works really well.
I challenge you to a duel.
While Suffering is technically a Penelope song, we finally get a proper song sung by the person Odysseus has gone through so much to get back to. We see her nearly 20 years after the last time she's seen her husband, and it's becoming more and more obvious that Odysseus may be dead. 107 suitors are waiting to become the king, and she'll have to choose sooner or later. The song opens with Penelope's instrument, the viola, playing her motif, and it's quite the tonal shift from 600 Strike. She explains how she's delayed her having to pick a suitor for over 2 decades, but she finally decides it's time. When she sees Poseidon's storm in the distance, she thinks that this is a sign, and she starts the challenge. While Odysseus fights for his life, Penelope proposes this challenge to the suitors.
Whoever can string my husband's own bow and shoot through 12 axes cleanly.
She doesn't want anyone other than Odysseus, but she has a feeling something's gonna happen because of the storm, so she waits one last time, introducing the closing act. The challenge is a really powerful song which finally shows Penelope's protective during all of this. The Ithaca saga is so solid from start to finish, and this being the lowest song from the 5 goes to show how I feel about it. And don't get me started on Penelope's voice, holy shit. Speaking of beautiful voices,
Never seen a monster made of black men before.
Scylla. The entire motif through this song is absolutely amazing, and Scylla's voice works perfectly with it. Anyway, other things happen in this song, I think. Oh yeah, Odysseus. He's told by Eurylochus that he was the one who opened the wind bag and keep your friends close, and that will open a whole nother bag of wind in the next song. In retaliation, Odysseus tells him to make 6 crew members light torches in order to see through Scylla's lair, knowing full well what will happen. Scylla attacks the boat with fantastic vocals, may I stress again, and targets the 6 crewmates with torches. They made it through the lair, but those 6 men lost their lives. As the boat exits the cave, Scylla whispers to Odysseus that they're similar. They're both monsters. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I really like Scylla's vocals. Like, listen to this!
Deep down.
Those harmonies, oh my goodness, it's fantastic musically, and the lyrics are pretty alright too. I think it took a little long for Eurylochus to admit he opened the windbag, but better late than never, I suppose. Easily my favorite from the Thunder Saga.
Freshman incoming! Good! Freshman incoming! Good!
This life is amazing! In this super duper good song, his arms are open. That was a line written by my friend. But a few more things happen too. Polites and Odysseus journey to the island of the Lotus Eaters in order to get some food, and Odysseus is not having it. After 10 years of war, he still has his guard up, but Polites realizes this and tries to help him out of his rut. I'm going to take this time and say that Polites has one of the best voices in the entire cast, and he is criminally underused. Now, I know the reason for this is because he dies, but like, listen to him.
This life is amazing when you greet it with open arms.
Hot diggity shit, those are some baller falsetto notes. Songs like this make me wish I was a tenor, but who knows, maybe I'll try covering it someday. Anyway, Odysseus is unsure about the Lotus Eaters, especially after the food they give him is hypnotic. Not to be beaten, Polites insists that they lead him and Odysseus to another place to eat, and they direct him to a nearby cave in the east. While we know this is the home of Polyphemus, they don't, so the two celebrate their positive view of the world. It's a really sweet song thrown into Troy to show Odysseus learning mercy, a trait which he'll slowly lose throughout the musical. Throughout this journey, Polites and the open arms motif will act as the angel on Odysseus' shoulder, so it's nice to see the origin of that side of him. Troy really does set up most of the motifs we'll hear throughout the show, and I find that so cool.
I am the monster, rah rah rah.
Opening up our top 15, we have the closing track to Act 1 and major turning point for Odysseus, Monster. After being told by the prophet Tiresias that he's no longer the person who will return to Ithaca, he takes some time to think about everything that's led him to this point. The foes he faced, the betrayals he's made, the friends he's lost, everything which has happened that has resulted in this, and he finally realizes there's only one connection: himself. He's the one responsible for his men, including the hundreds he sent to die, and he's the reason why they may never make it home. He puts all this into one phrase: what if I'm the monster? He thinks about all the foes he's faced and how ruthless they are. The Cyclops killed his men without remorse, only to avenge his sheep. Circe turned his men into animals so that she could protect her nymphs, and Poseidon attacked his fleet in revenge for them not killing his son. That's still weird. He then compares himself to these enemies with how he stormed the Trojans and their horse so that he could return to Penelope. Going into instrumentation for a moment, the build-up in this song is absolutely phenomenal. It's the Act 1 closer, and it represents a major turning point for Odysseus and the show as a whole. Polites' message is dragged away as the crew chorus begins to chant monster over and over again as each chorus passes. The first chorus shows the Odysseus we've come to know cower in fear of the person he's become. The second being him realizing how he may only be able to return home if he is the monster, and we finally see him accept his new side and truly give in to his darkest thoughts. The music grows in intensity with each passing chorus, and my goodness is it fire. Speaking of the final chorus, the bridge beforehand sees Odysseus thinking about all the loss he's faced, and then decides there'll be no more. And then
I'll become the monster.
Jorge's vocals here are some of his best for sure, and it definitely hypes you up for the second act. It's so cool to see Odysseus evolve in front of our eyes, and it really makes you wonder what could possibly happen next. Unless, of course, you've read the Odyssey. The only part here I dislike is that he rhymed something wrong with piss him off. Like, surely there was something better there.
Come swim with me!
600 Strike may not be an amazing song, but the build up to it sure as hell is. After everything Odysseus has gone through, watching all of his crew die, being trapped on an island for years, and not seeing his wife or son for 20 of those, he is so close to his goal. Ithaca is in sight as Poseidon returns with his wrath, and he doesn't plan on letting Odysseus go. He insists he gets off his raft and into the water so that he can finally slay the pest who's avoided his grasp for years. If not, well,
Or I'll raise the tide so high, all of Ithaca will die.
Unlike ruthlessness, Poseidon isn't shouting or singing with vigor. He's tired and done with Odysseus. It nearly sounds monotone throughout most of his lines, and it builds a real feeling of dread with every passing wave. In a final attempt to live, we see a bit of the old Odysseus for a moment as he begs for Poseidon to reconsider, citing that it's been 10 years and that both of the men have gone through difficulties. However, Poseidon's mantra doesn't allow him to back away, and he casts Odysseus into the ocean once and for all. As our hero seemingly drowns, he's able to hear the voices of all those he's lost in the underworld. Polites sings to him as he joins them along with the rest of his crew, but then he hears his mother. He realizes that Penelope is so close that he couldn't possibly give up now, and this leads into 600 Strike. It's a fantastic number which recontextualizes Poseidon in a great way, while also setting up the vengeance the saga was named after, while the actual execution of that may not be amazing. This may seem like a weirdly high placement, but let me try to explain. If we were to compare Epic to Hamilton, a musical which greatly inspired Epic in its early days, then this would be Jorge's My Shot. We're introduced to the crew and their struggles to return home, and it also sets up several recurring motifs. We get the 600 men from Odysseus and the full speed ahead from the crew. Both are important musical moments which we'll hear a lot of in the show. As well as this, we're introduced to the two key characters from Odysseus' crew, his second-in-command Eurylochus as well as the captain's dear friend Polites. They're low on food, so they head towards an island which the birds are flying towards, and that's about it story-wise. Point is, the song sounds wonderful and sets up a lot in the musical, and I just like it, okay? It's my list, I can do that. Hermes! Hermes appears twice in Epic, and both of his songs are certified club bangers. But first, we see Odysseus at one of his lowest points, free from Calypso's island, but with only a handmade raft to get him home. Also, here's another boost for Full Speed Ahead. It opens with the same lines with a slight difference.
600 men under my command, 600 deaths under my command, with only one goal in mind: make it back alive to our homeland. 'Cause I had one goal in mind.
He doesn't have any of his men with him anymore, so there's just a long silence where they used to sing. Anyway, Hermes intervenes and tells him that not all is lost and that there is a chance to get home. However,
all you have to do is not open this bag.
Athena's game was successful and the gods are granting Odysseus a final chance. It won't be easy though, as Hermes says, since he'll have to traverse the uncharted ocean to return to Ithaca. He was trapped on a mysterious island which people weren't supposed to leave, so it won't be easy to get back. However, Odysseus has one advantage: another windbag. The storms Poseidon would have raged on him are trapped within it, and without a dubious crew to open it, he should be in the clear. Odysseus takes the challenge as an electric guitar starts playing, and he knows he has what it takes to get it home. The whole song sounds wonderful, with Hermes' musical motif coming back in full swing, and it's truly the last fun song from the show. Ending with Hermes being obscure about who fought for him with the gods, it perfectly sets up Odysseus' reunion with Athena later on in the Ithaca saga. Also, it's just a banger, holy shit.
I can't help but wonder.
I really wanted to put this one in my top 10, but the other 10 are just a little bit better. But we have got the penultimate song from the musical, I Can't Help But Wonder. With the other 4 songs in the saga easily overshadowing this one, I don't see too many people talking about it, but I think it's wonderful. Telemachus has just watched as his father, someone who has only been stories and legends to him for 20 years, killed every single suitor who planned on doing him and his mother wrong. That's one hell of a first impression. He has so many questions for his father, but ultimately can't imagine what he's gone through to get home. He talks about how he's heard so much about him, but has no idea what he's truly like. Most importantly though, he's felt so alone for all this time, seeing as the only other people in the palace have been suitors who hated him. Odysseus speaks to his son for the first time in 20 years by saying that he's also been wandering alone. While not physically for most of the time, he still felt alone by being separated from Telemachus and Penelope. He recounts all the times he was prepared to die for Telemachus and how he always dreamed of seeing him again. And now it's finally happened.
My son, I'm finally home!
It's a beautiful moment, both story-wise and musically, which allows the audience a chance to breathe after everything Odysseus has gone through. It's finally over, and he's finally home. In this moment, it's also revealed that Athena is alive after the events of God Games, and she faces him for the first time in a decade. She admits she was in the wrong, and that she wants to make right what she did before, but Odysseus has other things on his mind. He thanks her, but he knows that there's someone else waiting for him. He turns and leaves and goes to find Penelope. It's a fantastic moment, especially because we get to see Odysseus joyful and childlike again, able to hug his son who he's missed for decades. The number is wonderful, and I'm sure it will be a tearjerker once on stage. And now for something completely different.
Something we all have to learn to deal with.
Anger.
And here we have our big bad evil guy song. Poseidon is just a little annoyed that Odysseus killed Polyphemus, and he decides to do a little trolling. After opening the wind bag, the crew is sent flying towards his domain, and he's not too happy about that either. We hear a chorus chanting Poseidon's name in the start of the song, and the notes sung here are part of something called the danger motif. I haven't talked too much about it, but essentially, anytime there's any particularly spooky foes, the same set of notes play. And damn, this song uses it masterfully with the chorus. As Poseidon continues to berate the crew, he introduced something in the chorus which will become the theme of the musical. In Poseidon's eyes, the only way to get rid of his problems is using ruthlessness to get rid of them. We'll see Odysseus use this soon, but for now, he's still swayed by the open arms approach Polites believed in. Poseidon argues that blinding the Cyclops is a worse fate than simply killing him, so he criticizes his mercy and calls out his false sense of right and wrong. He allows Odysseus a chance to apologize for what he did, but in doing so, Poseidon is not swayed. Instead, we get one of the hardest lines I've ever heard in musical theater.
The line between naivety and hopefulness is almost invisible, so close your heart. The world is dark and ruthlessness is mercy.
Oh my god, Jorge, who hurt you? Because this line goes insanely hard. Anyway, Poseidon lives up to what he preaches and crashes waves on all but one of Odysseus' ships, killing all but 43 of his men. Poseidon's about to kill him too until he pulls out the windbag and becomes the nerd emoji.
All I gotta do is open this bag. What?
This part. Ugh, the song is so good and this just doesn't fit at all. Aside from that though, Ruthlessness is an amazing song, which really sets the tone for the musical going forwards. That would be, of course, if Puppeteer wasn't so... that. Many shows in musical theater have a type of song called an I want song. This song typically sits near the start of the production and is sung by the main character about what they want to achieve by the end of their journey. Good examples are Beautiful from Heathers, Go to Distance from Hercules, and especially the entire prologue to Into the Woods. Epic doesn't have a traditional I want song, but I'd say that Just a Man gets pretty close. It's easy to forget sometimes that before he was a monster, Odysseus was just a man. He was just a regular guy, a very skilled fighter, yes, but a man nonetheless. Not a legend, not a god, just one man. This song is the perfect example of this, as it shows Odysseus having to decide between killing an infant or not. He knows what will happen if he doesn't, but he still has the morals to make this a difficult decision. The last time he saw Telemachus, he was the age this infant was, so that makes it even harder to decide. The song is all about Odysseus' morals, and he just wants to return home to his family, but this decision is keeping him from that. The bridge, however, manages to set up his journey throughout the show, where he asks himself how far he's willing to go.
When does a ripple become a tidal wave? When does the reason become the blame? When does a man become a monster?
This is the first of many decisions he'll have to make in terms of returning home to Ithaca. What he wants is to see his family again, and the conflicts he'll go through determine how far he's willing to go to achieve such a goal. Just a Man is bookended by Odysseus in the Ithaca saga. Seeing just how different he is from the person in this song is crazy. So while not a typical I Want song, I'd say it's about as close as Epic gets. Also, it's beautiful from start to finish. Odysseus' youthful voice is so interesting to hear in comparison to what he sounds like at the musical's conclusion. No doubt in my mind, this is the most underrated song from Epic. Overshadowed by No Longer You and Monster, it's easy to forget the first of the 3 songs from the Underworld saga. But it's such a good saga as a whole, so I don't blame them. Only 3 songs, but all 3 are fantastic. Odysseus and his crew descend into the land of the dead, and almost immediately we get one of my favorite choruses from the entire show.
Nothing's what it seems. Nothing's what it seems. And here in the underworld, the past seems close behind. This land confuses your mind.
Fantastic vocals and lyrics, and it really makes the underworld a terrifying setting. To make matters worse, eventually Odysseus and his remaining crewmates are met with the spirits of their friends who died. The 558 men who perished under Odysseus' command look down on him and the crew who survived and begin to sing together, and it makes for one of my favorite musical moments in the entire show.
Why would you let the Cyclops live when ruthlessness is mercy?
Goosebumps every time, man. Along with the crew, Odysseus sees Polites and was reminded once again how his open arms ended up costing him his life. But the kicker comes when he hears a voice call out to him, familiar, saying she's waiting. Odysseus realizes that it's his mother and that she died while he was away. The two exchange a really sweet moment, made even sweeter when you find out that the mother character is actually voiced by Jorge's mother. She has a very good voice, well, pretty good, so clearly Jorge got it from her. The whole song is just a bunch of great moments which combine to make a fantastic entrance into the underworld, with a great chorus to top it all off. The whole saga ends off Act 1 with a bang.
We're up all night for good fun.
Luck Runs Out is really Eurylochus' song, and I'm all here for it. Unlike most other characters in the show, Eurylochus doesn't have a musical instrument to represent his character. Instead, he represents the voice of the crew, so when he sings, he's typically joined by a chorus of the workers. It's a really cool touch, which is especially evident in Mutiny and here. Anyway, Eurylochus isn't sure about Odysseus' plan to climb up to the wind god's floating island, as he doesn't want to inflict the wrath of the gods. Little does he know. Odysseus counters this by asking him if any other plans have gone awry in the past, and that they've come so far through his judgment. But Eurylochus and the crew have other opinions on his leadership, as seen in this fantastic chorus.
But how much longer till your luck runs out? How much longer till the show goes south? How much longer till we all fall down? You rely on wind and people die on it. Whoa.
It's a super powerful moment which plants the seeds for the Thunder Saga brilliantly. If I've learned anything from reading Warrior Cats, it's that a second in command should be able to challenge their leader, and Eurylochus does a really good job. Odysseus is caught off guard by his hesitance, so he asks him where this came from. He says that he doesn't want anyone else to die, and boy howdy, will he. He repeats the chorus and Odysseus pulls him aside. Instead of treating him with the kindness we've been seeing so far, we see a different side of him. He doesn't want Eurylochus to convince his crew to doubt his actions and tells him to stop questioning him. He sounds really annoyed with Eurylochus and puts up a pretty good facade outside of this moment. It's a really powerful song which shows the true sides of both characters.
Try to remember.
This may be a fairly out-of-pocket pick, but Remember Them is really solid. Right after Survive, we find Polyphemus prone after falling to the ground. I know I say his name differently every time, but I just don't know how to pronounce it. It's revealed that Odysseus put some of the fruit the Lotus Eaters gave him onto the offered wine, making the Cyclops fall asleep for a brief moment. In that time, he looks to his worried crew, people who are looking to him for direction after their comrades fell, and he knows just what to say.
Remember them, we're the ones who carry on. The flames of those who've gone, and our comrades will not die in vain.
This isn't just a man anymore. We're seeing Captain Odysseus, the reigning king of Ithaca. He uses Polites and the other crew members who died as fuel to their fire, the memories giving them the strength to carry on. The crew is prepared to kill the Cyclops until they realize that doing so would trap them in the cave, as his massive body would block the entrance. So Odysseus decides to do the next best thing: blind the Cyclops. Okay, Poseidon, I know he was your son or something, but they're totally justified on this one. The crew turns his club into a spear and stabs him in the eye, but in doing so, he begins to wake. They all run and hide as more Cyclops join Polyphemus in his cave, and they ask who did this to him. And this is where Odysseus' gambit pans out.
Was nobody, if nobody hurts you, be silent, don't go.
Everything is going grand until a certain god disrupts his escape. Athena wonders why he isn't killing the monster, and Odysseus rings the praises of mercy to her. The more he talks about being merciful, the more he realizes that the warrior of the mind idea he's being fed isn't something he wants to be. So to spite Athena, he decides to take credit for the blinding and goes up to the Cyclops to reveal who he truly is.
I am the infamous Odysseus!
It's a really good song which brings revelations to Odysseus' character, as well as sounding really good. Also, it finally is a good use of Athena outside of the Wisdom Saga, so that's nice.
Pretty obvious, just don't fucking rape people.
This song covers some extremely upsetting topic matter, so if you don't want to hear any of that, I'd suggest going to this timestamp. Hold Them Down sees the suitors attempting the challenge proposed by Penelope, and they're not enjoying it. Antinous, the bitch from Little Wolf, remember, leads the suitors as he shuts down the challenge, claiming it to be impossible. He calls Penelope's bluff and calls for his fellow suitors to take matters into their own hands. He plans to usurp the throne, starting by taking the life of the prince. He plans to meet him at the docks once he comes back so he can strike him down, leaving the crown to him. The plan grows darker as he plots to break into Penelope's chamber and, well...
Hold her down, all the gate is open. Hold her down, all I get a taste.
As Antinous is plotting all of this, we can hear the voice of one suitor in the crowd which sounds different than the others. As he prepares to set the plan in motion, someone fires an arrow into his throat. Serves him right. And then we transition into Odysseus, the song. I'm not transitioning from male to Odysseus. The sound on this song is immaculate, with Antinous' vocals working perfectly in parallel with the suitor ensemble. The choruses will shake you to the bones, and the gradual strengthening of the suitors' voices make it all the more eerie. It sets up the suitors as a real threat and makes the revenge in the next song all the sweeter. Hermes! This is easily one of the most popular, if not the most popular song from Epic, and for good damn reason. The Circe saga may be a little mid, but if I had to describe it in a sentence, it would be, wouldn't you like and 3 other songs. Hermes comes down and offers Odysseus some assistance in the form of an 80s synth-pop masterpiece.
Wouldn't you like a taste of the power? Wouldn't you like to use more than words?
Hermes' voice here is absolutely phenomenal, somehow sounding British and also like Poseidon. It's strange. And though he only appears twice, he steals the show every time. He set up how dangerous Circe can be, but he also says that Odysseus isn't equipped to deal her. However, he offers him a plant which can give him the power to make a monster which can rival her, and he calls this plant
Holy moly.
It's a Deus Ex Machina moment for sure, but with the fire backing vocals and Hermes' fantastic shouts at the end of the song, it totally makes up for what's happening in the plot. It also single-handedly saves the Circe saga from being completely mid, so that's nice.
Can I try rizzing you up? Sure. Please, 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 please.
Hot diggity shit. For years, Epic fans wondered how the musical would end and if it would live up to their expectations, and based on the opinions I've seen on this song, it sure as hell did. The very opening of the track is one of my favorite moments in the entire show, as Odysseus calls out to his wife one final time before seeing her again. We hear the door creak open and the two lovers face each other for the first time in 20 years. What comes next, though, is extremely interesting. As for the first time since the underworld, Odysseus questions his morals. He sacrificed so much and so many to get to this moment, and only now does he truly cope with the weight of his actions. He cares so much for Penelope that he's completely honest with her. He is not the same person that he was when they last saw each other. He's become a monster and has become the person Tiresias prophesied to return to Ithaca instead of him. Everywhere he has stepped foot, he has left a trail of blood, and with the exception of some gods and a witch, killed everything in his way. As he describes this, we hear the motifs of ruthlessness playing in the background, showing how he's been affected by his years at sea. So when Penelope asks him if he's the person she's been waiting for, he says he isn't. However, after telling her all of this and all that he's done, he asks her a question. One which I think he's known he'll have to ask for years now. After hearing this, Penelope asks him to do just one thing for her, to move her wedding bed out of her room. Hearing this, Odysseus is shocked. He had carved that bed with his own hands in the olive tree where they first met. This line may seem simple at first, but it makes you realize something else. The olive tree didn't move, so he built their entire palace around the tree because he loved her so much. What a damn good husband. Anyway, this caused the two of them to briefly argue until this moment.
The only way to move it is to cut it from its roots.
Only my husband knew that, so I guess that makes him you.
Penelope.
I will fall in love with you over and over again. I don't care how, where, or when, no matter how long it's been, you're mine.
This was a test from Penelope to prove that Odysseus was still the man she loved in the inside. Of course, Penelope is a strong and brilliant warrior just like Odysseus, so she's one of the only people on the show who can truly have the upper hand on him. She knows that no matter what he did it to get back to her, and that's the kind of dedication someone only has out of love. Just like building a palace around a bed. That's a kind of love that can't be replaced. A love that can't die out, and a love that's worth waiting for. And then Odysseus realizes once and for all that Penelope still loves him. As he does this, the Just a Man motif plays, showing that deep down, he's still the person he was when he left, when he had to kill that infant many years ago. This is a beautiful moment as everything Odysseus has been working for finally comes to fruition, and he embraces Penelope for the first time in 20 years. It's a masterful symphony with nearly every motif we've heard throughout the musical appearing in some form, which brings Odysseus' Odyssey to a close. The final lines of the show see the two saying the words they've longed to say to each other for decades.
I love you.
But before Odysseus got to see Penelope again, he had to fight for it. This is one of the 2 numbers from the show I consider to be perfect, lyrically, tonally, and especially in conveying the story. After 20 years, Odysseus arrives back at his palace just in time to stop the suitors from killing his son and getting back to Penelope. He is pissed. Then we get one of the coolest moments in the entire show. Every great enemy he's faced, be it Polyphemus, Poseidon, or being simply in the underworld, is accompanied by a chorus chanting the foe's name in the danger motif that I've mentioned before. Jorge said that Epic was inspired by video games, and this chorus acts as a musical accompaniment to a boss battle. However, we hear it once again in this song, but it's not from Odysseus' foe. It is Odysseus. He's a big enough threat to receive the same treatment as the gods, and boy, Ares must be pretty happy for what he's about to see. He hides in the shadows and one by one kills each and every suitor crawling through the halls of the palace. The suitors believe they have the advantage, seeing as it's been 20 years and there's, 107 of them, but Odysseus is too powerful. He steals their weapons and shoots down any torches which could illuminate him, and the suitors begin to panic. Any advantage they believe they have is quickly snuffed out. More and more suitors die until one realizes that retaliation is worthless and faces Odysseus to beg for mercy. He explains that now that Antinous is dead, none of the other suitors pose any threat, and he even has the audacity to request he offers open arms. Long gone from Polites' advice, Odysseus shoots him mid-sentence and denies mercy. Elsewhere in the palace, some suitors find where the weapons were hidden and have a glimpse of hope until... I'll talk shit about Little Wolf, but damn, Athena and Telemachus make a good team. That is until the suitors overpower Telemachus and attempt to sway the king to grant them mercy. However, Odysseus is too strong, and he overpowers the suitors holding his son captive. Now, I'd like you all to imagine this next part from the eyes of a boy who's never met their father, and this is the first impression of him ever.
Got him. Mercy. Mercy. My mercy is long since drowned. It died to bring me home. And as long as you're around, my family's fate is left unknown. You plotted to kill my son. You planned to rape my wife. All of you are going to die. You filled my heart with hate. All of you who have done me wrong. This will be your fate!
The walls are painted crimson as the suitors face an unstoppable force, a loving husband. Bodies line the palace, blood seeps through the stone floors, and Telemachus of Ithaca meets his father. Now, this all sounds familiar, doesn't it? Odysseus has been told that he will do exactly what he's doing now. Let's see if our number 1 song on the list, and if you've been keeping track, you'll know which one I'm talking about, might have to say about that.
You are not the guy. You're not capable of being the guy. I had a guy, but now I don't. You are not the guy.
Odysseus is fantastic, both the song and the man, but I fully believe that No Longer You is the single best song in Epic the Musical. After journeying through the underworld and revisiting his past friends and personal demons, Odysseus comes face to face with the prophet Tiresias. As he approaches, a choir sings in the background the notes to the danger motif, although Odysseus is not seemingly threatened in the moment. Tiresias explains how he can see through the past and future, and that he can see a way to help Odysseus get home, but it's in a world which isn't the one they live in. Odysseus is confused. Circe sent him to see this prophet for a reason, so why couldn't he help? Then we're greeted by the chorus, and might I add, for only having 1 song, the voice actor for Tiresias is phenomenal. Beautiful voice, that man could sing me to sleep. But the biggest thing here is that Tiresias is telling Odysseus exactly what's going to happen in the second act. It may be a bit obscure, but every line alludes to something which will happen. The Song of Past Romance refers to the sirens impersonating Penelope. The sacrifice of man comes from Odysseus sending 6 of his men to die at the hands of Scylla, and the betrayal mentioned comes from Odysseus doing this along with Eurylochus admitting to opening the windbag. The brothers' final stand shows Eurylochus attempting to stop Odysseus from killing him and the crew, and Odysseus is on the brink of death in Love in Paradise when he's standing by the cliff. As for his final breath, he nearly drowns in the Vengeance Saga when he hears the voices of his fallen friends. The biggest line here comes from the title, I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer you. In the immediate next song, we'll see Odysseus become a monster in order to return to Ithaca, so the Odysseus we've come to know isn't the Odysseus who ends up returning home. It's kind of impressive how Tiresias just spells everything which happens in the next act while not fully spoiling it. Odysseus is obviously shocked by this, and seeing as he's come all this way just to be told that he'll never come back, that's pretty upsetting. But Tiresias isn't done yet. Of course, Odysseus is terrified at the thought of Penelope being with someone else, but everything Tiresias says here sounds like the Ithaca saga. This person is clearly Odysseus in the future, but he's so afraid of this person that it's kind of scary that he becomes him. Finally, as the chorus is sung again, we hear voices chanting in the background, this time referring to more things which will happen in the future. And finally, literally everything which happens in the future is foreshadowed here, and it makes the perfect conclusion for Act 1, even though there is technically one song, but you know what I mean. This song also inspires the turning point for Odysseus, setting into motion the chain of events which will get him home. Every facet of this number works to push the story forward, however, it's done in a manner which doesn't feel expository or sudden, but works alongside the story we've grown to know to continue the plot. Also, again, Tiresias' voice is angelic. I love this song, and it works to end the first act perfectly and only gets better on re-listen. All in all, Epic is a fantastic work of fiction which adapts the Odyssey very well and makes for a fantastic musical. As soon as I discovered it, I was overjoyed to find out that a stage adaptation is in the works, as well as a few video games based on the songs. Jorge made the absolute correct decision in becoming a musical theater major, as the community he's built through his work is awe-inspiring. All the visuals you've seen on screen throughout this video are from dedicated members of the fandom who've made these animatics to put his music to visuals, and all of them can be found in the description. I know I talk negatively about a lot of the songs here, but there's no such thing as a perfect musical, and as a whole, I still love the show. There's a reason this video is so long after all. Speaking of, thank you all for watching. If you want to see more rankings like this, go ahead and subscribe. I already have a bunch of them, and I don't upload too often, so I won't clog your feed. And Jorge, if you're watching, just know that when the stage adaptation arrives, I'll definitely try to be in the front row. If I have money, that is.